We were taught to earn our joy, finish the work, then feel good. Our guest spent a career proving that backwards. Joy is not the reward. Joy is the fuel. Belonging begins here. Hello, friends, and welcome to I Know I Belong When, an innovation, unbiased production where bold voices, curious stories, and authentic impact amplify knowing that you are invited, seen, heard, and needed. Our conversations go from the boardrooms to the break rooms, from the sidewalks to our living rooms, from our relationships to ourselves. We explore the full spectrum of belonging, the joy of being seen, the pain of being left out, and the courage it takes to build spaces where every identity is welcomed, valued, and loved. We also hold space for each of our unique identities to joyfully prosper and thrive. I am your host, Christopher Bylone, someone who believes knowing you belong is a birthright.
What if the most rigorous business strategy in the room is joy? Most leaders treat joy as a reward, something you hand out after the numbers land, a pizza party, a perk. Our guest looked at that assumption and flipped it on its head. He proved that joy is not the prize at the end of the performance. It is the foundation that produces it. Meet Greg De Koker. Greg is a brand and culture transformation expert who has spent his career inside organizations where the gap between how a company wants to be experienced and how it actually is experienced runs wide. He is the best-selling co-author of Brand, It Ain't the Logo, It's What People Think of You, and the author of the upcoming book, Joy Squared, The Hidden Power of Joy in Leadership. After hundreds of stakeholder interviews and culture transformations, one pattern became impossible for him to ignore. There was too much suffering at work. He gave it a name, the global joy deficit. Then he built something to close it. That something is Joy Squared, an ecosystem of coaching, retreats, and his aligned framework, and his podcast, Joy Squared, Live with Joy, which I was a guest on. His mission carries a name worth reviewing twice. 44 million people living, working, and leading with more joy, not someday, intentionally. Here is the part that makes that mission believable. This is a man who kayaked the Amazon, hang glided over Rio, and trekked Nepal. Yet his favorite place in the world is his cottage, making driftwood art with his family close by. Family first is his number one value. It will always be. Joy is not soft. It never was. The man who proved it is right here. Greg De Koker, welcome to I Know I Belong When.
Wow, Christopher, what an introduction. I can feel that when someone kind of plays back your life's work and a big part of who you are. Really, it means a lot. And it reminds me of the voice message you left me before we even met. And you had binged on my first 4 episodes. I only had 4 at that point. Now I just released the 13's coming out tomorrow, actually.
Oh, wow.
It was really our first, this is before we even chatted. Your voice message and your post, again, both tears to my eyes. And I should have printed this out larger, but let me just take my glasses off and read this because it's not super long. So this is from you. And this was you saying, starting off with, let me be clear about something. Joy is not a perk. It is not a reward for grinding long enough. Joy is a leadership practice, and it is one too many of us who have been told to set aside in the name of professionalism. I recently discovered Joy Squared, Live with Joy, a podcast hosted by Greg De Koker, and I binged the first 4 episodes on a drive to see my son. Every single conversation reconfirmed what I already know in my bones. Joy is a non-negotiable for me in how I lead and how I show up and how I build. Greg brings together founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, and change makers who refuse to separate joy from the serious work of leadership. That is not naive, that is necessary. We have spent too long treating joy like it does not belong in boardrooms, in strategy sessions, in the hard conversations. It does. Joy is not the opposite of rigor, it is the fuel for it. It is what keeps us honest about why we do this work in the first place. Thank you, Greg, for bringing this conversation to the world. I am grateful for it. If you're looking for more meaning, more energy, and more joy in your life and leadership, give this one a listen. You will enjoy it. See what I did there? As you capitalize joy. So that, I mean, for me, and it's not reading it because it's like an ad about me and my podcast. I'm reading it because I was like, you are all about belonging. And in reading that, I can feel it in my body now too. And where's the Kleenex box? But no, it's just like, when I'm doing my life's work and when someone recognizes you for that, it's beautiful.
We were exchanging messages on LinkedIn. We've been connected on LinkedIn forever. And it felt like for a while we were just a number in our connection count. And you actually had responded to a message that I had sent out to my network and with your podcast. And you said, hey, like, because I sent a message about stuff I was doing and you responded in kind. And look, I'm always about returning the favor. If I'm asking you to do something and if you're asking me to do something, then hey, I'm going to do it. And it landed at the most appropriate time, right? And so for those who have been following me for a while, also those who are paying attention to the scenery behind me, you'll notice that the scenery has changed recently. And that's because I moved to the Poconos to be closer to my son. And it was actually the day before I was making a drive from Charlotte to Pennsylvania, that 11-hour drive that it is, you sent me the podcast. And I went, okay, I'm going to need to entertain me somehow on this drive because it was just me. And so I said, you know what, instead of just listening to music, which I normally do because that brings me a lot of joy, I said, let me spend some time listening to this new podcast so that I can integrate it into my life, right? Because, I like things to be sustainable. And I just had the time. And it was like, oh, I like the first episode. Okay, let me listen to the second one. Oh, I like this one too. Oh, I like this one too. And everyone was hitting a message that I did not know I needed to receive. And it was confirming so many things that were going on in my life and why I was making certain choices that I was making so that I could experience joy. And so it was just a perfect timing. And I believe in serendipity and everything happens for a reason. And so you landed at the right moment. And I just felt so compelled to reach out to you. And also just felt like the world needed to know what I knew. And that's why I made the post on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it was really special. And not because it's all about me, it's because you even say when you kind of post and you share your episodes, like if if you share it and this impacts one person, right? That's one person that needed to hear it, one person that's going to benefit from it. And I'm the same way. And when you sent that back to me, I'm like, okay, well, at least one person is new in the process. I needed to hear that message too, right? As you know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of energy. And just the fact that it resonated that deeply with you, I'm like, okay, well, then I'm sure there's others in the early stages of building it and trying to get the message out and just try to support people in intentionally creating joy and leading with joy and living with joy and working with joy. Because, there's just too much suffering, as we both know, in the world, right? At work, at home, and everywhere in between. And if there's something in here, if there's an idea and a message, it resonates with someone and it gives them an idea and it gives them some joy, then I'm really happy about that. I'm really joyful about that.
And I think also what I recognized was here is somebody who just did something that I'm doing as well, right? Mm-hmm. I know what it was like to record the first series of episodes and asking people to come be a guest on this new show that is not tested. You don't know if it's going to be a success, and people are saying yes to you because of the relationships that you built with them. Mm-hmm. And then you go release it to the world and you're like, okay, is this going to land? Right? Or do I belong in this space? Right? Yeah. Do I belong being a podcast host? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. Right? And so I wanted to say to you, hey, you belong here too, right? Thank you for what you're doing in this space. So just really appreciated it. Well, okay, enough with the congratulatory statements we've been giving to each other.
Mutual Admiration Society.
Right. I'm sure the listeners are giggling as they're listening to this, but they really want to get to the heart of the conversation. Yeah. So what do most leaders get wrong about joy?
Yeah, and you touched on it at the beginning and you shared it in your post as well. And I think most leaders look at joy as a distraction from the real work, as opposed to the real work.
Right.
right? And, looking at it as a reward for performance instead of the driver or the fuel for it. I think most leaders look at it as it's soft, right? Instead of strategic. I think it's the most renewable source of energy and the most underutilized asset and the biggest competitive advantage and the best strategy a leader can embrace, which is joy, right? And really creating the conditions that allow for joy, because then performance and success will follow, not the other way around. It's a lot harder. I mean, most people aren't happy coming to work, right? We know that.
Right.
Lowest record number engagement over 10 years. Employees are quietly quitting, as Gallup refers to it, kind of checking their emotions at the door, doing the bare minimum, and just collecting a paycheck, but not engaging and not enjoying being to work, like thinking about work and coming to work. So I feel it's a leader's responsibility to reduce suffering as much as possible at work. And it sounds ridiculous to say it that way, Christopher. And it's funny because I never used to say it that way, but I've been saying it the other way, that it's a leader's responsibility to create a positive, high-functioning, high-performing environment where people feel seen, heard, and valued. And as you would say, they know they belong. And I've been saying that, but I don't know if that's been resonating as much. So I'm really coming at the suffering and like, what can we do to reduce suffering? This massive global joy deficit. What can we do to change the conversation? So I think there's a huge opportunity for leaders to create better work environments and better cultures where their team is thriving and not just surviving. So that's what I'm up to.
Yeah. And as you're saying this, one of the things that's coming to mind for me is a mentor of mine, Marisa Andrada, who also happened to be a guest in season 1, said something that was really compelling to me, is that leaders get the culture they deserve.
Yeah.
And if you want to have a culture that is positive and joyful, well, then you need to be positive and joyful.
Yeah.
If you are somebody who is not that, well, then that's the culture you're going to get. So make a intentional choice about what type of culture you want around you, and then work to make that happen, right? It's not going to just happen. Intention requires work, right? Just like any good relationship requires work. It requires being engaged in the process and understanding, making mistakes and being honest about those mistakes. And then how do you recover? So I think, that's what was coming to mind for me, is that leaders get the cultures that they deserve.
And I love that. And I listened to that and I remember you writing about that. And I thought that was a wonderful way to say it. And I think intentions is a key part. And I remember talking to a leader once, and he said, well, we don't really have a culture. And I said, yeah, every company does, right? It's either by design or default. And, and I knew in that moment he wasn't intentionally creating a culture.
Right.
And there's still an opportunity to change that, right? It comes from awareness. Robin Sharma has this 3-step success formula. It's like, with better awareness, you're going to make better choices. And if you're making better choices, you're going to get better results. So it really comes down to awareness. Is the culture, is the work environment working for you? Do people enjoy coming to work? Do they enjoy being at work? How is your team responding? There's really a huge opportunity, I think, change the work dynamic. And I think if you can change it at work, it's going to help everything. Like the ripple effect is huge, right? On the drive home, when you get home with your spouse, with your kids, with your neighbors, right? Joy's contagious. And I think we really need to embrace it and be intentional with it, not let it be if, when.
Right.
So there's a real opportunity here. And I'm just hoping that, the message resonates with more and more leaders and more people, and we start doing things about it. So 44 million, here we come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Greg, this wouldn't be the I Know I Belong When podcast if we didn't talk about your name. Names are important to me. As everybody knows, I go by Christopher, not Chris. So it's intentional to get names correct and understand the history behind your name. So De Koker, take us back to, where does your name come from? And is there a moment that when it taught you something about who you are or where you belong?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I hadn't thought about that in a long time. And here's what I've heard, and I haven't really done any additional research because I like the story. And as a friend of mine often says, why let the truth get in the way of a good story? So whether it's 100% true or not, this is what I've heard from my family, is that De Koker. So my dad was born in the Netherlands. A lot of people, will refer to it as Holland. So he's 100% Dutch. De Koker is a Dutch name. And it used to be De Koker. So instead of Dekoker, it used to be Dekookr. De Koker, which meant the cook.
Mm.
Which is very interesting because I've grown up always saying, well, once my two younger brothers got a little bit older, that there were 4.5 out of 5 gourmet cooks in our family, and I was the point 0.5. So I was like, it's time to step up my game. And over the last, years, I've stepped up my game. So now I confidently say there are 5 out of 5 gourmet cooks in our family. We're all foodies. We all love cooking.
Oh, I love that.
Creating amazing meals and sharing, with people. It's a great way to kind of take care of others. And I think it's also to help. Well, it's about creating joy as well, right? I mean, I enjoy the process. I enjoy sharing it. I enjoy seeing people's reaction most of the time, when it's good. There's the odd time when it doesn't work out or whatever, but, then all that is learning. So, but yeah, so that's kind of the story that I've grown up with. I've also been intentional and always capitalizing kind of the D and the K. I always felt like I got a bonus cap. It's like GS, Gregory Scott D. Koker. GSDK. I sometimes shorten it to GDK. Some of my friends call me GDK. So I always was
Sounds like a good clothing line.
GDK?
Yeah.
It could be, yeah. We'll see. Well, that's another passion too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think so what happened to the second O?
So I just heard it kind of got eliminated, right? It was like maybe to North Americanize the name. Or, I don't know the full history just because I'm like, I should check it out at some point, but I'm like, it's a good story. I'm going to stick with it.
Well, I mean, my name got changed, my last name, when my family came over from Italy, the last name was Bylone, and it was Bilonie. There's a New Italy house in where I grew up, and there's a plaque that has the name that it came over with when they came over from Italy, but it got Americanized over time, right? And so eventually they dropped the I at the end, and it was just the E. And then eventually the I changed to a Y, and then it changed phonetically to Bylone, right? And so it's just a very interesting way of how, over time, people's names have gotten changed to make it easier to spell or make it easier to pronounce. And so it's just fascinating to me about how that happens with everybody's name and the history behind it and why your name is your name.
It's interesting because with your name, I thought it's interesting it's Bylone. And so I was thinking there's a huge difference between being alone and being lonely. And the fact that you're all about belonging, I thought, oh, wow, there could be a little story in there. But obviously that's not part of your history, but that's part of your past and your future for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking about belonging, so I want to get to the moment that you knew you belonged. So you sat in hundreds of stakeholder interviews, listening to other people describe whether they feel seen, heard, or valued. And I want to flip the microphone around.
Mm-hmm.
Take us to a moment in your life when you knew you belonged. Where were you? Who was there? What was happening around you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it really made me think about it because no one's ever asked me that. And it's a beautiful question. It was emotional thinking about it. And it took me back to when I was 10 years old. And I was at church with my parents and my younger brothers and my grandparents and my aunt and uncle. So kind of the big family there. Excuse me. Getting choked up just thinking about it. And after church, I asked my parents if I could walk back to Gramps' house. And he had to cross the street. It wasn't that far because you could actually see his house on the river from the church. So you can literally, we're looking out, in the parking lot and you can see his house. And they're like, yeah, sure. I mean, all you have to do is you go down the street, you take a left, and then you take another left and just walk until you get to his house. So it doesn't really get any simpler than that. Well, 3 to 4 hours later, I ended up making it home. So I was walking down and I took a left. And then the next left was so quick, I thought, no, it can't be the next left. That's too quick. So I second guessed my second left and got lost. And I'm walking around and I remember just being frustrated. And I didn't really feel scared. I felt like frustrated because like I was like, how did I could see his house. Like, how am I so far away from his house and have no idea how to get back there from two quick lefts? So anyway, when I finally made it back to my grandpa's house, I walked in the door and my mom is bawling. And I hadn't seen my mom cry like a lot. My dad, my brothers were there, my aunt and uncle, my grandparents, like everyone's just except the police who are there and the police who are about to put boats in the water to start scouring the river. That's where they were at in the search process. And yeah, it was emotional. And for me, it was, even though we have a very close family and I felt like loved growing up and all that, it just gave me a different perspective on belonging. I was like, wow, they love me like so much, even more than I even thought. And I knew they loved me a lot. There's no question. But it just kind of reframed belonging, and it gave me a sense of what home feels like. And I was like, that feeling, it's not, like home isn't just a physical dwelling. It was a feeling.
Right.
And I could just feel it in my body after the response, like the hugs and the tears and just like, oh my God, I felt like, I'm really important to this family and I really do belong here. So it was a very special emotional moment that my parents will sometimes now laugh about it, Wasn't necessarily, they weren't laughing about it.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, as a parent, I can really empathize what your parents were going through at that moment. Not as probably as tragic in that moment, but thinking about when my son kind of disappeared in the airport. We were getting ready to fly someplace. I forget where it was, but he said, "Oh, I need to go to the bathroom." And he decided to, and we're like, okay, well, it's just around the corner, right? And we're waiting and he's not coming back. And it's like, where were you? Right. And like, where is he? And we went to the bathrooms and we're like, well, maybe he went to another one and we can't find him. Like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden he turns a corner and there he is. And we're like, Jacob, where were you? And he was like, well, I was in the bathroom. And we were like, well, what bathroom were you in? He was in the women's room.
Oh my gosh. That's so good.
Right?
Oh.
And I was like, Jacob?
Yeah.
So like, it was so innocent, right?
Yeah.
But in that moment, we're like, he can't leave the airport. We're in a secured location, but we can't find him. And we were panicking.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can understand exactly what your parents were going through. He's never going to live that one down. And now it's recorded for history now. But sorry, Jacob. I think you get to something that I've also been really focused on is how do you make sure that you belong not just to yourself, but at home, right? How are we making sure that we're creating a culture for our own children to know that they belong at home? Because before we're expecting them to understand how they fit in society, in their community, at school, eventually at work, we have a responsibility as parents to create that moment of belonging for our own children.
I agree. It's huge.
So thank you for sharing that and understanding. So get more beyond the feeling. Like, what was it like? So going beyond that day, right?
Yeah.
How did that change potentially your relationship with your family?
Yeah, I think it just deepened it, right? I just kind of felt different. I think I'd always kind of felt like I was always trying to fit in, to different places. Like, I was in the brain group, but I wasn't the coolest group. I wanted to be in the cool group, which was a jock group. So I didn't really feel like I fit in there, and I knew I didn't fit into the jock group. I was a decent athlete, but not, I think it just really solidified my place, at home in just a deeper way. Because again, my parents were great, they loved us. And I knew that. It was just in that moment, just the feeling I had with like the hugs and the tears. It was just, I'd never experienced that level of, I guess, of love. Like I had heard it and lots of hugs, lots of I love yous. But just it was just so deep, I guess, that it was a beautiful moment. Once I got there, it wasn't so beautiful for my parents and family leading up to that. That's 3.5 hours of wondering if I'm ever coming back, right?
Right, right. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I do need to ask about kind of the harder side of belonging, the moment you knew
Mm.
you didn't belong. So take us to a specific moment, a room, a team, a season of life where you were overlooked, erased, or felt like someone you were not. What was happening in that moment?
Yeah, this was like a year later, Christopher. I went through a lot, it seems like. I mean, I had a good childhood, but these are some two big moments. This was like when I was 11. So what would that be, like fifth grade, sixth grade? Yes, I guess sixth grade.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe, yeah, maybe younger. I can't remember, but I was in that range. And I was nominated as one of the best authors in our class.
Hmm.
And the class was going to take a vote on who was going to be the best author that would go and represent the class at a young authors contest, at a young authors like awards ceremony and day. And it's so funny because I don't remember the exact details, but my best friend was in my class. And I do remember saying something to him about, like, can you put in a good word, like when you're voting? Kind of like one of those half joking comments, like,
Yes.
buddy, I already know who you're voting for. I didn't quite say, can you sway the rest of the class? I don't know if it was a class vote or if he was a judge. I think it was a class vote. But here's how I've lived that story. I lived it as if I said enough to him that he convinced the class or convinced the other judges, whatever the truth was, that I was the best author. So I won. And I remember being at this celebration. It was really a celebration for all the best authors, people that were nominated for that. And I felt so alone. I didn't feel like I belonged there. To use your words, I knew I didn't because I felt like I cheated the system. I felt that I convinced him I felt like an imposter. I felt like I was being judged. I felt like I was judging myself, and I did, for skewing the odds in my favor. And I remember sharing that with my parents, and they were like, Greg, that was a great book. So it's interesting that it could have legitimately been a class vote where all he did was vote for me, like, and everyone, whoever, wanted to vote for me voted, and, whoever didn't. And I ended up winning. I could have legitimately and honestly won, which is how my parents think it went down. And it could have.
I think it did, Greg. I don't think I mean, look where your life trajectory has led, right? And so give that 11-year-old a little bit of credit,
Yeah.
right? Give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
Everybody does it. I still do it, even though I am in my mid 40s. I still go to people and been like, hey, can you please support me? Right? It's the human thing we do. And so, that's, hey, look, like, people are still going to make the decision that's right for them, right? And so you may have heightened the awareness of the outcome you would like, but you did not sway the outcome. So give your 11-year-old self a little bit more grace there, my friend.
I did rewrite that story, and I think maybe I need to rewrite it again. Yeah, because it's funny because I kind of came out of that with I didn't deserve it. And that was like a consistent theme growing up. I didn't deserve it. I don't deserve it. So I kind of carried that along into my older years.
Yeah. So do you think that kind of led into you understanding about that there's a joy deficit? Because I think in that moment could have been a very joyful moment for you, but you weren't leaning into that joy, and so there was a deficit there. So it's almost like you created your own suffering, and so how are you helping people get past that?
Yeah, that's well, I mean, one thing my mom's always said is that she's like, she goes, you have an ability to really feel what other people are feeling. Some people say, that's EQ, empath, whatever we call that. And it's true to this day. I can really kind of feel it. And sometimes I get mired in it, and I've had to work on my boundaries and stuff. What that's given me is an opportunity to feel it, but also process it and leverage it and work with it in a way that builds people up and lifts people up and calls people up. And I like the expression of calling people up versus calling them out.
Right.
I think one supports. One is like, hey, I know you, I know your goal, I know your vision. And maybe right now you're not doing something, you're not saying something that's aligned with that. All I'm doing is bringing awareness to that. I see you
Right.
living that dream. I see you achieving that goal. And right now, maybe you're just a little bit off course. How can I support you in getting back on? I think in that moment, people don't need more judgment. They're already judging themselves. They're criticizing themselves. They're having a hard enough time. So I
Yeah.
think it's just given me, Christopher, it's given me a new level. I think by getting present to my own suffering, it's just given me an opportunity to judge less. Like I'm just
Mm.
I can't say I never judge. I'm really quick to notice when I am.
Yep.
And I just try to approach situations and relationships with just more curiosity and openness and understanding and patience, and not let any prejudgment run the show. And I remember, I can share a quick story just on that. I remember I was at a retreat and I asked the retreat leader, who I knew really well and who I trusted and loved, and she's amazing. And I said, how was it to work with the owners of this retreat center? Because I was hosting my own retreats. I just wanted to get an understanding of the experience, what it was like, because she's a great retreat leader. And she said, it hasn't been good. They haven't been easy to work with. It's been really frustrating. I'll never host another retreat here. And I was like, wow, I was kind of shocked. And I remember looking over at the owners. It was a couple. And I remember looking over at the man and thinking to myself, yeah, he looks like a bit of a jerk. And luckily, Christopher, I've done enough in personal development. I'm a personal development junkie and human connection junkie. And I've done enough work on myself and men's groups and all that kind of stuff that I caught myself judging him before I even spoke to him. And I was like, now I have to go over. Now I want to go over. Now I'm going over to meet him. I went over and met him, lovely man. And he ended up coming to one of my retreats. He said, hey, if you ever want to host one of your retreats here, I know you're just starting off. I'm happy to work with you on the price. He said, I'd love to invite you to come over for my morning ritual, get to know the place, get to know each other. Anyway, he was so generous and so loving. And it's just, that's been my experience of him every time. And same with his wife, lovely as well. Met her, and I was like,
So that was your unconscious bias showing, and you
yes,
challenged it right on the moment, right? I think that's something, in my work that I talk about, is that we all have unconscious bias, right? And it's not about just being conscious about the biases you have. It's about purposely being unbiased. And the way you do that is you actually challenge that conscious bias once you know that it's there, right? And so the opposite of unconscious bias should not just be conscious awareness of your bias.
Right.
You want to take action on it. And so you want to be a purposely unbiased individual.
Yes.
And you demonstrated that in real time, because you said, okay, I looked over that person. They look like a jerk. Wait a second. Is that the right assumption to make? And you went, probably not. So let me go investigate that. And maybe he was, right? And you could have been confirmed, but you weren't. And when you met him, you went, oh, wow, my assumption was completely wrong based off of information you got from somebody else who may have had a bad experience with them. And that's their own lived experience. And we're not going to take that away from her. But your experience was, oh, it's positive. So let me host a retreat with them. So, yeah.
And I almost want, no, and thank you. And I just wanted to add, and I almost started judging her for judging him. And I found myself doing that. And then I was like, no, I know her well enough that she's an amazing, generous, grounded person. And maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe he was. Maybe they both were. Who knows what happened? It's none of my business. And so, brings me to another philosophy that I love. What other people think of you is none of your business, because it usually has nothing to do with you. It's usually their stuff that's kind of coming and being projected. So yeah, I was lucky. I mean, I almost started beating myself up for all the hundreds of times where I'm sure I had those unconscious biases where I didn't take action. And then I was like, no, I'm not on that path. I'm on the path of forgiveness and changing the conversation and being aware of it and helping other people to create that level of awareness in a way that meets them where they're at, not in a way that judges them, just as a way of sharing this, in what you're doing, and sharing different examples and different stories to create more awareness so people take action from that awareness and not just have that heightened sense of awareness. But an insight doesn't mean much unless you take action on it. I always tell people don't confuse insights for action.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you are somebody who is truly trying to model belonging, right?
Yeah.
And So you've told me something about joy streaming, those tears of joy that show up when somebody feels truly seen.
Mhm.
So tell us about a moment when you did something, a ritual, a habit of choice that made the other person know that they belonged.
Yeah. So I'm lucky and I'm grateful that I have a lot of those moments because I
Mhm.
think that's part of who I am. I'm very inclusive. I notice when people are taking a step out of a group conversation and I try to bring them in gently and invite them back in. I think inviting people into conversations is that's really the whole basis of my retreat, and of my
Mhm.
coaching and my consulting is inviting people into the conversation. Not that you should be doing this or you shouldn't be doing that. I don't take people to the should shed and I don't should on people. So one specific example, of that was I was with probably 7 other buddies, and one of our friends had kind of organized a get together. And some of these guys we hadn't seen in a long time. And so we're all together, we're all having fun. Everyone's kind of, chatting about whatever. But I just kind of realized there's some things that I was thinking about that I wanted to share. And everyone was having so much fun. I'm like, God, I don't want to bring the mood down, the party down, the energy down by sharing something a little bit more serious that was going on with me. And I'm like, well, if I'm feeling that way, maybe some of the other guys are too. And so I just kind of said to everyone, I said, hey guys, like I love being here with you. I haven't seen some of you in a really long time. And I'd love to hear how you're doing, honestly. And I just said, I'd love to know how your life's working out. And there was silence for a moment. I was like, all right, well, I just ruined the party. And after like about a few seconds, one guy jumped in and he just said, you know what? He goes, I'm having a really hard time. He said, it's an all-time low. I'm at the worst point in my life, lowest point in my life. And he said, my marriage isn't great. Finances aren't great. My career's not great. So he shared, quite a bit. And I think it just created that environment, that safety, that openness, that acceptance for everyone to share. And everyone kind of just
Mhm.
shared what was going on for them. And we talked about that moment. And this isn't about me taking credit for it. This is because all I did was, it was just an idea. This was just an insight I had, and I shared it. And then, as a group, we all took action on it. So for me, it was just, I was lucky. I think we were all lucky that we were ready for that. And we talked about that meeting because that changed our group dynamic.
Mhm.
From that, we didn't look at it as, hey, we're going out, but if someone's got something to share, and it was easier to check in. It's like, hey guys, I know we're having fun, we're having a beer or two, we're having dinner, we're laughing, but does anyone
The
need
best
anything?
time to check in,
Yeah, that's right.
right? It's the
What
best
else?
time to check in. And
In
so,
person.
because you are just showing genuine care for somebody else, right? And how do you want to make sure they're doing okay. You weren't, I don't think you were expecting for somebody to share something rather negative. You were just asking,
Yeah,
how are you doing? And I think that that is a question that allows people to, just to be relaxed in a moment, to know that you truly are genuinely caring about how they're doing. Because also it could have been a positive story and you want to celebrate that too. Right. And
100%.
so,
Yeah. I think
so
it was
thank you
more
for
like,
modeling that.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, it was, and two of my friends have since passed.
Mm,
So, that just brings like more energy and awareness to like everyone, let's have these conversations now,
right.
right?
No, don't
Yeah.
wait.
Let's
Don't
not
wait for
worry.
them.
Yeah,
Okay,
whether it's
friends.
your family or friends, and this
So
out. Honest, I've been interviewed a lot on podcasts, and you like, yeah, it's emotional, like having these kind of conversations. So thank you for leading the way and
I
creating a safe
appreciate that.
place to share and to joy stream.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to shake things
Yeah.
up just a little bit here. So
Woo.
I have
Okay.
a fun bonus question for you.
Yeah.
Bring a little bit of levity here. So you have kayaked across the Amazon. You have hang glided over Rio. You've trekked Nepal. Quick answer: what is the one thing waiting at the cabin, the cottage that beats it all?
Hmm. I mean, for me, it's my family and my
Mm,
hammock, usually in
mhm.
that order. No,
Okay,
I'm kidding. I'm
fair,
kidding.
fair enough.
Always in that order. I'm a family first guy, so that's my number one value, family. So it's always that, and it's that feeling too. It's that feeling of home, that I
Awesome.
have there. Hmm.
So before we really close out this conversation, what is the call to action? One specific ask
Hmm.
the one thing you want every listener to do this week to bring a little bit more joy into their life?
Yeah, I would love it if everyone just really thought about and got intentional about what brings them joy.
Mm,
And I think it's something that we don't always ask ourselves. And I think we often tie it to, well, I need to do something that's going to move the needle forward, or it's going to bring in more money or create more security, or, maybe there needs to be a reason for it. But what if it's just to feel it? What if it's just to give yourself some joy, right? Because you deserve it. Everyone deserves it. So I'd love for people just to really be intentional about what have I been maybe thinking about that I've been putting off? Maybe because you don't think you have time for it. Maybe you think you don't deserve it. But what's going to bring you joy? Because it's different for everyone, right?
right.
And I think if you do that, because sometimes just really being intentional at that and doing something for yourself that brings joy, that can change the trajectory of your day, your week, your month,
Absolutely.
a relationship. So that would be my call to action and my invitation really to everyone listening.
Well, thank you for that. And what a great way to start to bring this conversation to a close. But before we do
Mm.
that, Greg, you have built a career proving joy is not soft. You have set out to bring 44 million people along with you. That work matters. It's changing rooms you will never even see. However, in this moment, no framework, no book, no title, just you finishing the sentence that closes our show. I know I belong when.
I feel at home.
Hmm.
Yeah. For me, it's a feeling and it's a knowing. And when I feel at home, I feel accepted. I feel like I can be my authentic self. I can be that goofball. I can be all of me, right? And because there's lots of different sides to me. And when I feel at home, I think it also kind of, it's not my job to give other people permission to feel at home, but I think it creates a space where other people can give themselves permission to feel at home wherever I'm at, whether that's at home or it's in a meeting or it's at the cottage or it's at a dinner party with friends. So that feeling for me is really important. And so when I feel at home, that's when I know I belong.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And I definitely know I belong when I feel at home too, because
Mm.
one of the things we talk about is how do you know you belong to yourself and how do you know you belong at home? And
Yeah.
so, Greg, thank you so much for this conversation. I truly do enjoy it. This brought me joy. And so thank you for that.
Oh, thanks, Christopher. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you reaching out and for everything you've done. I loved having you on my podcast as well. So I look forward to a long time relationship. I can see you as a friend for life. So thanks for creating this space and getting us kicked off. Appreciate it.
You are very welcome.
This has been a great reminder that belonging is not a destination. It is a practice, and it starts with listening. Friends, if this episode challenged you to move outside your comfort zone, please follow our show and give us that 5-star review you want to give, and add a comment about what you will do to champion a culture of belonging. These actions will help to amplify the message to others so they too can find their own moment of belonging. Whether it is navigating the complexities of workplace culture, finding acceptance in a new school, building trust in a local community, or forging identities within our own families, these stories reflect the raw, honest, and unfiltered journeys each of us take every day. And we want to hear from you. Finish the sentence, I know I belong when, and send us a voice note. Your story could open a future episode. Thank you for listening. Know that your bold, authentic self is welcomed, valued, and loved. And until next time, remember, you belong here.